from an undisclosed location in the Great Western Desert in the land of the free and autonomous Native American people, the 2024 presidential campaign leader aims time to return all US land back to their rights owners. This is the Benzine Podcast. Techno-communism will win.
Welcome back to the podcast, which I will, for brevity, refer to from now on as the Futurism Podcast. It's been a few years, and for you joining me, I should apologize. I haven't lost faith in the prospect of advancing technology, bringing about technological singularity type effects, but I have lost faith in the people in the West and in the United States who are the main controllers of this technology. In the course of peeking behind the curtain of some of these things, I come to realize that most of these people aren't that good, and just they have a pretty good reputation, undeserved. Just as Google brought up into a mega billion-dollar organization and national prominence and influence as a military contractor. It was developed through military contracts. It's become profitable through military contracts. It's not recognized as a military contractor. It's thought of as a nice, techno-progressive company. That's not true. And that's basically every tech person that you're ever going to meet. They have a handful here and there. And so I was a little disillusioned with these people. In my experiences, you probably may recall that I was a presidential candidate elected to represent the United States Transhumanist Party in 2019, supposed to be for the 2020 election. And came to realize as 2020 began and a pandemic was spreading across the country that people like the United States Transhumanist Party, its principal organizers within, were people who would, when they saw something like a pandemic coming, rather than, say, try to genuinely advocate for positive public health outcomes, as you would expect people who are interested in longer lifespans to do, they were sharing a variety of, for the lack of a better term, CIA talking points designed to maintain a system that does not provide adequate health care to Americans. And the result, with inadequate lockdown type conditions and masking and so forth, is about 2 million people dead. They say the number is officially at 1.3 million, but they've been juking those stats for quite some time. The number stayed around 1 million for a very, very long time, even though 2022 had as many deaths by contagion as 2021, 2020. So how is it that the number stayed at 1 million? Well, they were removing from the records the deaths of people who the cause could be attributed to anything else, even though they had contagious lung conditions at the time of their death. And also just not counting people by the same set of methods. And why are people being lulled into this false sense of security? Why are they being given these fake numbers? They built this mega billion dollar global vaccine business model, a new set of business models for particular vaccines, but there's any number of contagions ripping through various countries at any given moment. And how much does any one of those vaccines that you're going to take protect from all of those? but people stopped masking, even though 25% of Americans were masking at the best of times consistently. They stopped masking and stopped taking other similar precautions, lockdown type conditions. They stopped doing all of these things because there's a set of lies that are being told, convincing people that they are safe because these symptoms are relatively easy to ignore. It's not hemorrhagic fever with blood coming out of your eyes, and it's the relatively rare young person who's dying in a graphic way. So everybody's kind of just dying with a whimper rather than a bang, and so people are willing to ignore this. And these purveyors of three-letter agency talking points are more than happy to prop up that human failing. So you won't find any tech sector, not just the transhumanists who are focused on some pretty specific things, things that are the most coherent of those is the idea of people living longer. But you won't find any really tech culture subset or organization that is not guilty of this kind of thing. So I didn't really know what to do. There's really no point to try to work towards activist goals or any kind of operational objective if all of the people that you would work with are really, really corrupt. Something did change my mind recently, and it's not that any of these people are becoming better. A lot of other people maybe are moving in the direction of being a little better, but these people who work in for-profit tech enterprises of this kind and they're hangers-on, they're basically irredeemable. But there's some things in the news that caught my eye, and it made me want to maybe start putting together this show again. It was in a matter of weeks that I became aware of an announcement from Chinese computer scientists saying that a quantum computer, which is much larger than other quantum computers, the hardware is not that different from what IBM has, but a Chinese quantum computer that has, I believe, 362 qubits is now working well enough. The technical problems that plague quantum computing have been fixed well enough that, according to Chinese scientists, this computer is basically backdoor into every non-air-gapped system in the universe, which has been met with skepticism by Westerners, not because it's likely untrue, but because it's just creating cognitive dissonance. They just don't want to think about it. For me, who was a supporter of Chinese state increasingly in recent years, and who's long been interested in all computer science and computer science news, and particularly, not ignoring that coming out of China. This is kind of an exciting development. So there's, the headlines about this describe this as an existential risk to Western businesses and security. This is a term that's used quite a lot when talking about quantum computing in the last 15 years, increasingly in the last 5 years as a prototype's been developed. And the, the idea that this could happen, this is interesting. It's interesting in I believe that the China is nothing if not a pretty cautious place. They don't do a lot of political grandstanding. The things that would pass for political grandstanding, like the Belt and Road Initiative, are things that effectively just trying to build stuff to help people around the world. And there's not a lot of other shenanigans that this is something more of the fascist West. The whole range of spy game type things. And destabilizing countries. This is something the United States has just developed and had this great expertise in. And other far-right Western powers do these things kind of at the behest of the United States as well. But China doesn't do that stuff. So when China says 400 qubit machine can rip your guts out, and what they're really saying is don't start a war. They're not saying we're inclined to destabilize marketplaces. I consider myself a revolutionary Marxist tech accelerationist, so I would say, destabilize the marketplaces. But that's not what China's going to do. So this is one bit of news, and I hope that it's not merely saber rattling, as I've suggested. I hope that it will be something that will begin to transform, because it has the capacity to undertake creating post-monetary effects. If you can hack anything that's not air gapped, get inside of anything that's not completely nailed down, you can change the economic system through these methods, which is a stated goal by generally understood in other ways, but this is a stated goal of a socialist state like China. But maybe this starts to happen in 2 to 3 years at the soonest, in some kind of phased way. Most people in the United States and its fascist sympathizers maybe are the exception, but most people don't really want to just do something that's going to get a bunch of people killed. The United States is, in the last century and a half, has killed 100 million people in different countries. Literally, just the number of Iraqis that were killed in one instance is so many other conflicts of this kind. And what were all of these 100 million people that were murdered by the United States military operations? What did they do wrong? They wanted to build a humane economic system in their own country. The United States had various interests that they felt that they should protect, and so civilians and governments were just demolished, just completely demolished. This has happened time and time again, but other people who are not fascists, as Americans are, they don't just want to kill a bunch of people. So, if you have the power to poke a bear, like fascist USA and fascist West, by undermining a lot of operations. They might start to do that in some kind of phased rollout or way that is generally agreed upon to not lead to a lot of deaths. At the same time, the United States and China are involved right now, and it can only be described as a hybrid Cold War around what is effectively bioweaponry. And that's a dangerous situation. The United States is constantly having its think tanks and functionaries brainstorming on how to attack China. And, as the things get worse in the United States, as the state begins to fail and crumble, the danger of more extreme actions against an adversary to confuse the public and galvanize the operation statecraft, and also foment hypernationalist sentiment on part of a gullible public. Those risks become very high. And that's essentially what I think this kind of announcement about the qubits, quantum computing, is in response to. Say, you might think you can get away with this. We'll pull the rug out from under you if you try to start World War III to stop your own government thieving fascist government from beginning to collapse. Everybody knows the United States delaying the inevitable. You can't fool all the people all the time. It's becoming increasingly anti-fascist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist in this country. There's virtually no significant number of people under the age of 40 who don't hold those features. Whatever social media might have you believe, whatever the news might have you believe, this fascist sympathetic demographic is completely collapsing. So how powerful can a government be that it's just has no interest in having zero popularity, having zero, it would have to become highly authoritarian and increasingly volatile to maintain that stranglehold on its people, which it's done quite successfully. But everybody knows that even if you don't have technological singularitarian effects causing upheaval of a more dramatic kind, everybody knows that this is a dying beast. But I believe that this upheaval is maybe closer than we think. A few years ago, talk about this kind of computing technology that would lead to that sort of upheaval as something that would happen 2050 or so. 2045 is the number a lot of these true believers like to use. And I felt even that was 2050 was being pretty optimistic. But a couple of days after the China announcement, and China's winning the arms race for quantum computing is not a big surprise. But this particular saber-rattly kind of press release is it's pretty big news. Because of course it's not. It doesn't get a lot of lines above the fold. If sometimes stuff like this pops up on Fox News in kind of an alarmist way, but for the most part, the capitalist class just chooses to ignore this sort of thing. They have a whole a mythos about themselves, it's false, and a whole mythos about China, it's false. And they have a very carefully orchestrated ballet to maintain those sets of belief systems. So the reality of those situations is happily ignored by the mainstream news media, by the social media and new media organs, which are no better, and this the thing that's changed my mind a little bit, made me want to come back to doing this strange podcast, was this Chinese quantum computing announcement, but also reading about another prototype for quantum computing, where the stabilizing this quantum computing systems to such a degree that they're going to be able to build much larger sets of a billion qubits. Is what looking at now. So if you can hack any system in existence with a 400 qubit prototype, what is the billion qubit prototype going to be capable of? You should be asking yourself. With that, I will begin to wind down this, because I'm going to try and keep these to about 15, 20 minutes. But I want to, when I know you, and I know that your impulse when thinking about these things is to say that, billion qubits, metaverse time. Why do we need to worry about workers? Isn't this no? So there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. The United States has automated an awful lot of sectors, tremendous amount of automation. When people like Buckminster Fuller looked at what was happening in the early to mid 20th century, they said, well, this is a lot of automation. My God, people will be able to work 10, 15 hours a week. Everybody will be a chicken in every pot. And that's the opposite of what happened. What happened was a certain kind of managerial class emerged that was able to siphon that productivity and those resources to the 1%. And so what happened instead? Life expectancy is lower than you could have imagined. People thought at that time that people would be living to 120 now, that people would be in a veritable utopia. And what's happened is a tremendous amount of economic instability and inequality, a tremendous amount of death. And you cannot assume that a greater amount of resources, because this productivity and automation is orders of magnitude better than it was at a certain time when workers' rights were protected, and so you cannot assume that a growth of tremendous new industries and new breakthroughs under technology is going to serve to lift these remaining billions of people out of poor conditions or literal bondage. There's people in this world who are literally enslaved in the many millions. And even if they're not enslaved, there's a better part of 1 billion people in this world who are born and they never have shelter or proper food or water or health care resources that they would need. There's 1 billion people who are treated worse than the dogs of the Western world. And that's not going to go away as long as there is a fascist West. And this these are heady matters, but you cannot go into this movie logic of saying that because elegant new systems can be built, that they will be used to help people in any way. They'll build more sophisticated managerial mechanisms to siphon those resources away, and people will say, well, I have some new gadgets. That's cool. I have a couple of things that in my life that are interesting, marginally better. So it's okay that a small fraction of people, white people in the Western world, are controlling and hoarding these kind of resources and holding themselves back. If you can imagine a social dynamic of people with just things that are relatively uncomplicated, but even by non-quantum computing type standard, more advanced interfaces are built. They're not being used, but they're built. And when you have human beings who can connect to each other with these kind of interfaces, and then you have computing systems that are just mediating that connection, you have what is effectively massive hive mind, which is something that's tech people will talk about, and everybody else will just be like, okay, that sounds like a movie. But when you under capitalism, what is that hive mind actually functionally doing? It's like just a couple of guys in the military running an op, something like that. But what is it doing under socialism? It's the world coming together, and you have millions of people connected and working on incredible new things instead of a couple of people in a room doing dirt on behalf of the worst people alive. So in which of those two circumstances is everyone materially better, even the people at the top of the capitalist system? None of this should be very controversial, and nor should it. You have to be a particularly intelligent person to figure this sort of thing out. But people have so much conservative ideological baggage when it comes to things like this that they can't even begin to plan or convince anyone that any of this is a good idea. So I hope that you'll those of you who have a chance to watch this will consider these ideas, because there's no tech accelerationism without revolutionary events occurring, and there's no controlling for the upheaval of that without an awful lot of concern for ethics, and specifically concern for all of the people. I'll stay away from talking about the idea of humanity becoming a different kind of thing, or becoming joined in at an omega point type thing, because on any time frame that we can conceive of, it's just as likely that people will shy away from that. People could already be wearing pretty neat smart glasses, but they don't. There's a lot of things like this that people don't do, but that doesn't mean that people can't begin to be brought together without some complete deconstruction of identity and emerging of minds. I think that sort of thing may well happen around the beginning of the next century, but it just as well might happen in the year 2525. But I think that my feeling is that singularitarian effects will begin to happen in this decade. There's no way that you can have so many very sophisticated emerging computer science prototypes of different kinds, not only quantum computing, coming into play, and when you're talking about a number of people in a room in a hive mind, and China has a lot of young people that are good computer scientists and interested in this sort of thing in the ways that the kind of low-key techno-fascists of the West are not, or they're interested in it, but if they're not able to navigate it because of their baggage. So if you have some thousands of Chinese computer scientists doing this, and people in the West saying, "Oh, we're not quite sure if we can do it because we're fascists, and this doesn't make a lot of sense to us," then who's going to become the power in that scenario? It's the people that are joining, coming together, and go China. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been a little bit entertaining. Share some links that give maybe a little more background and technical information on Chinese computer science and this Chinese press release and quantum computing generally. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon.